Being part of a mastermind has its innate benefits, one of which is gaining perspective from thought leaders in various industries. In today's episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook, we've done just that. We've put together a mastermind episode taking a handful of the best insights. This episode is jam-packed with valuable information you'll be able to apply immediately. Let's dive in.
Well, when I'm looking for my next job, how big was the call center you were last running? Oh, it's 300 people. How big is the compensation package you're looking for? Well, it's only 300 people. I can only draw myself in such. Now, that's clearly a very simplistic example. But if I get into, okay, what does my retirement look like? What does my next role look like? What does my next compensation package look like? It's not just that you're threatening my current self-image. It's that you're threatening my thoughts of where my future was going to go. And so people in those situations can get defensive, that they're worried for themselves. And that's totally understandable and acceptable. And so one of the hardest parts of the cultural change that I talk about a lot in digital transformation is helping people understand that this isn't about disempowering people. It's not about making people look bad. It's about how can we achieve the best outcome.
And if you're an empire builder, this is also intimidating, right? If you're an empire builder, it's just, wow, all of a sudden my empire is dwindling. I went from 300 people to implementing an AI project that went well, and now I don't need these people. And now I'm really responsible for 20, and eventually I'm not going to be needed at all. There's got to be an insecurity that comes with that, especially for those type of folks.
It can do. And I don't want to paint digital transformation as just one thing. It can go in the other direction as well. It could result in a huge expansion of the business.
Of course.
You could suddenly have that empire just because there's now 5 times as much turnover. There's a lot of things that can come out of going through this transformation.
Scraps to a European company. And it was kind of a sad story because these guys had hired some of the best engineering talent you can think of. They were the pioneer. They were the leader. But within a few years, they got passed on because the culture didn't shift per your statements to constantly keep up and be ahead of the curve versus just being forced to go to the next cool new technology, which is, let's say in that case, 10, 15 years ago, mobile first,
Right.
So I agree with you.
Yeah,
I think he was an anchor, to be honest with you, as brilliant as he was, I think he was the anchor in that business and got in his own way.
Yeah, I think there are 2 parts within that. One is the fact that large, especially legacy organizations, they're never going to be on the front end of the adoption curve. They might be fast followers if they're lucky. They'll never be early adopters. They'll never be pioneers. Maybe they'll have some innovations in some very specific spaces, but on the whole, the most they can do is hope to be fast followers. There's just too much risk associated with moving that much infrastructure and that much organizational inertia too fast.
And that's I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
No, and that's an appropriate kind of risk assessment on their part, right? So that's okay. Equally saying, we need to be mobile first, and that's going to be our future. And let's say this is 2012 or something, thinking that mobile first is the future instead of something that is urgent, pressing, and we need to have been doing this for a year or 2 already.
Sure.
The iPhone has been out for 5 years at this point.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a big part of it. The other part of that is that you do often find, especially in first generation companies with the founders still at the head, their innovation, their big thing that made them successful, even more so if it's not a tech company, if its products and services are not technology inherently, the way in which those people were innovative or motivated, forceful, well-connected, whatever it might be that got that business off the ground and made it successful in the first place, has very little to do with these changes that I'm talking about. Let's say you're in chemical engineering and you've pioneered some new process for synthesizing something. Fantastic. Your expertise sits in chemical engineering and probably in business. It doesn't necessarily sit in technology and understanding the rapidly changing ways in which companies need to serve their customers and their partners and their suppliers and so forth. And yet you, as this chemical engineering company, are sitting there with multiple suppliers bringing you equipment, bringing you chemicals, multiple customers that you're selling to, maybe multiple channels through which you sell. And all of the individual people in all of those chains are just people. They're just people that live in the world, that are excited to hear about this chat GPT thing, or are really, really annoyed that they have to get on TikTok in order to keep up with their son's latest, whatever he's up to. Whatever it might be, they live in that same world that is moving on. They are now used to banking online. They're now used to being able to do their grocery shopping online. They're now used to being able to pull up their phone and check when that package is being delivered by UPS. If you don't mirror what's happening in the rest of their lives with the ways you expect them to engage with you as this big chemical engineering company, they're going to go with someone that makes their life easier.
Projects that have won dozens of international awards. What makes a digital project award-winning in your eyes?
This is an interesting question. A lot of the awards that the teams that I've led have won have been for what I have come to consider a little bit kind of sparkle, rather than true utility. So it's an interesting question. Of the projects that I've run, the programs that I've run, the ones I'm most proud of probably aren't the ones that won the awards. The awards that I've won, my teams have won 3 Cannes Lions, for example. One for making a vending machine that gave you free ice cream if you smiled at it, and a couple of others that aren't quite as amusing. There was a Wikipedia, but for sneakers, so on and so forth. Those projects were great, but they were sparkle, as I say. They were made in order to look great and to be a talking point, something really, really cool that people could talk about. But a vending machine that gives you free ice cream if you smile at it, that's not something that we want to then build 25,000 units of and put in every airport and shopping mall in America. That's something that we're going to build 11 of and ship them around the world to events because it's a gimmick. It's a really cool gimmick. We did amazing work. The technology team did a fantastic job. But ultimately, it wasn't something that we're building to make a fundamental change to our business. The projects that I think have made the most impact are the ones which are a bunch of people in a back room that never get any credit. They're the ones who say, oh yeah, we've moved our ability to service customers digitally from 36% to 52%. Right, that's huge. That means that customers who don't like picking up the phone, don't like interacting with humans, can do stuff on their mobile, on their computer, whatever it might be, in almost 100% more cases. That's enormous. Those projects are the projects that I think are the most impactful and have the greatest outcomes. Nice. What makes any project successful, though, ultimately, it's just about alignment. It's about everyone pulling in the same direction. And that is partially leadership, it's partially culture. I don't think that's new or unique, or I don't think I've got anything to say that hasn't been said a million times on that front. We know how to get projects done. That's never been the problem. The reason I think digital transformation needs to be something different is that it's not about getting the project done. It's about changing us as a company, an organization, an enterprise, so that we can get more and more of these projects done in better and better ways, faster and faster timescales into the future.
They don't establish the boundaries. They don't create the collaboration. And so, your team is left becoming the product martyr, doing anything and everything.
Yeah, I think you wrote about this recently.
I did.
Right?
Yeah. I was talking to a product manager, a close friend of mine, who said to me, I think I've had it. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I was just at work and somebody came up to me and said, what's the metric, product metric XYZ? And I was dumbfounded because I wasn't tracking that metric at the moment. I can understand why that metric might have been interesting, but even if I was tracking it, I wouldn't have had that number off the top of my head. And so I said, I'm sorry, I don't have that number for you. And they looked at me like I was a complete moron. And I thought, how horrible is that, right? Like, I can't necessarily blame that other person because my friend works in an org where, the boundaries of product are not well defined. And there's this feeling that product managers are going to do everything. They're going to do whatever it takes to ship. And honestly, that is a big part of what product does. But when taken too far, I think it can cause real problems. They don't have time to spend doing strategy. They don't have time to spend planning. They don't have time to spend talking to customers. So it's not a great mix in those kind of cultures.
Eugene, what should be the mission? What should be the mission of a product person? What should their absolute obsession be when they're working in this role?
Yeah, that's a great question. And when you think about it, like that's the question, because they don't write code, they don't sell software, they don't talk about the product and marketing. So what do they do other than get
what the hell do they do all day?
Yeah. What do they do? Well, what they do is they help the team make sure that we are shipping the right product to the right people at the right time. That's the fundamental way that the product team builds value for the product through company. And it's long-term sustainable value. I like to emphasize that. So they don't crack the whip at engineering and make them go faster. They make engineering much more productive by making sure they're working on the right things and making sure the things they do work on are much more impactful. So I think that's the product mission. Think about something that needs to power the entire internet's business model. You're going to touch every aspect of business, technology, economics, design, anything you can think of, you can throw into that bucket of ad tech. It is the most interesting business model, the most interesting technology components, the most interesting product problem you can think of. A great way to cut your teeth as a product manager. If you're starting out, there's a lot to learn in the ad tech space. I have a bad habit of not knowing where my lane is. So even if you did tell me not to do other things, I would probably do them anyway. So
less siloed.
Yeah.
Less siloed. More opportunities for impact, more opportunities to experiment and make moves, right? Let's talk about leadership and product development. How do you foster an innovation within your teams? Now I'm thinking as a product executive, especially when starting a product team from scratch. So if you were to start a team tomorrow as a head of product, what would that look like? And how would you foster innovation amongst that team and the organization?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Certainly, it starts with hiring the right kind of people who are problem solvers and have a natural empathy for customers and want to connect with that. And obviously, people who have a rapport and credibility with the technical team, because without them, we can't get anything done. The core horsepower has to be there as well. We need to have bright and analytical people working in product. And certainly flexible people given that variety. So once you start with a great team, I think the other important thing is to get those folks into situations where they have direct access to customers and hearing from those customers, understanding what the customer pain is, and being able to pattern match across lots and lots of situations. I think that gives people the direct inspiration that they then bring back into the organization, bring back to the engineering team, provide that context, and then help the group as a whole to synthesize that into innovation and into a great product and a great roadmap.
With innovation comes a lot of failures. Can you share a moment in your career that was particularly challenging and how you turned that situation around? And again, it could be an innovative process or it could just be a very challenging situation.
Yeah. I'm going to, you know what, I will share with you. So there are some lessons as a product person that you learn, unfortunately, over and over again that you should never have to learn even the first time. One of those lessons is that the product is not the thing that you build. It's the thing that your customers use. What does that mean? Well, if you think about it, once the thing is built, there's a lot that needs to go into a customer actually using the thing. They need to maybe have training. They need to have documentation. They need to have a support system to use the thing. They need to be able to ask somebody questions if something goes wrong. If you haven't thought through those other steps, then the perfect product may very well not succeed. And there was one product launch that we did that solved the problem. We thought, oh, it's just beautiful. Like it does exactly what we think it needs to do. It has all these extra features. It has all these capabilities. Yeah. And we launched it, and then we realized that our internal teams there were too many features, too many functions, and the internal teams were not able to make use of all of it. And so even though every demo we would be able to show, hey, oh, you want to do that? You can do that, no problem. When it came to using it live, even our own internal teams couldn't set it up and support it properly for the customer. So we went back to the drawing board and did something that's really difficult for product people and also engineers to do. We started removing things. We started to simplify the product.
Keep it simple.
Features. Keep it simple. We removed features. We made it simpler. Every time a seller would say, "But a customer asked me about that feature," we'd have to go in and find out, like, was that a deal breaker for that customer? Were they just asking a curious question? We would have to have those difficult conversations. Say, no, well, we think that we can remove this feature, and it's going to save a lot of complexity, and it's going to get people from time to value really quickly. And it's going to save our own teams the support costs that we were seeing. So that was an instance where the product answer was actually removing a bunch of stuff to make the thing successful. The rest of the org doesn't understand, why this would be important. But if you're a product person, and certainly if you're an engineer, you recognize what happens when products become bloated, they get overbuilt. And the features, first of all, you have a problem of coherence, right? There's so many things that nobody can understand how they fit together. And so your customers start to struggle with the product itself, even though, again, the features are in there. Then there's an issue of maintenance. Every single new feature you add, you need to maintain, not just one time, but forever, as long as anybody is using that feature. And so we've seen this in so many other pieces of software that we use. Think about Excel. How many of the features of Excel do you use? And now think back, how many times have you gotten annoyed because a feature that you don't use is in the way of something that you do? I have noticed lately a lot of sort of offhand suggestions on Twitter and other places that, you could just use an LLM to generate your product requirements document as a product person. And won't that make your life so much easier? And I actually think that A, that's a bad idea. And B, a lot of product managers who think it's a good idea are actually victims of a poor org structure that is encouraging that. And let me explain why I believe that. So ultimately, the value that we add as product people is not writing things down. Writing things down is not the thing that makes products better. And if you're writing things down that nobody reads, or you're writing things down that aren't actually built into a product, or you're writing things down that doesn't help the team get more efficient, get smarter, get more aligned, then you're just doing a performance. What's that performance for? Well, I've heard somebody describe it as proof of work. How else am I going to prove to my boss that I really did something? Gosh, well, if that's the only way, then I think you might have a problem within your org. Yeah. Right? If you're generating a bunch of paper that nobody reads in order to prove that you're valuable within your org, I think that's a problem, and that's something to talk to the product leadership about. There are even more practical issues with using LLMs. Part of this process is of generating requirements and generating roadmaps is actually bringing and synthesizing information from real customers, their real pain, their real needs back into the org. Your LLM has not talked to your customers. It doesn't know. It may have some corpus of information, but it's not talked to Avitas and asked him, what was that one feature that was really, really important to you? That's golden information. That one line of that was the most important feature would have been the thing to take back to the product team. And your LLM doesn't know the answer to that question. The other problem is that the LLM is too good. It will fill in every single answer. If you ask it, how many customers do I have? It will tell you. If you ask it what my competitors are, it will tell you. It may be completely wrong, but it will tell you. And we know that product management it evolves. It's iterative. We learn over time. It's actually a good thing to leave things blank in your doc. It's a good thing to know what you don't know. And when the LLM fills everything in and it looks nice and shiny and you feel like your work is done, you may have just been led down a garden path. And that's really not good. So those are ways that it can go really wrong. And so I would advise product folks to ignore the people that say this is the easy button for generating a bunch of text that nobody else will read. If you work in that org, I'm sorry for you. Maybe this does make your life easier. Maybe this is like some way of, dropping a pile of paper that somebody says, ooh, that's impressive, and you can move on to do other things. Okay, I can respect that you need to do something practical, fine. But if you think it's actually going to make you a better product manager, not that way. How can it make you a better product manager? There are actually ways that it can make you a better product manager. Let's think about some ways that it's actually going to help. We spend so much time compiling notes from customers. We talk to customers, we make notes, we think about how to synthesize. Well, you now have a tool its whole purpose in life is to take a bunch of text and summarize it. So now all of a sudden, maybe you take all of your customer calls and can use an LLM to summarize and pull out important bits. And then, of course, you can go back and reference the original one. Again, you're not abdicating your responsibility as a product person. You went and you had the customer conversations. You brought back the information. Now you're using the LLM to sort, sift, and organize. That's great. That's a fantastic way to use the tool at your disposal. Maybe you've written the PRD and you're thinking, gosh, maybe there are some adjacent markets I should be thinking about, but I don't have any good ideas. Ask the LLM. Yeah. Say, here's what I've got so far. What are the adjacent things I should be thinking about? That can trigger ideas for what other research to do, who else I should talk to, right? There's critique as well. LLMs do that pretty well. Here's what I'm thinking already. Tell me what's wrong. Tell me what questions I haven't answered. Tell me what might be confusing. Tell me what I might want to know. Again, LLMs are great. There's a new group of companies out there that's also trying to help you prototype, which I think is another fantastic way. Why? Because I hate communicating in text. What do people like to see? Pictures. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you can describe a picture to something and it will generate it for you? Well, guess what? Now there are tools that will do that as well. So now you're actually using the LLM to produce something that is helping to communicate, not taking away your ability to communicate or doing it for you. So I think those are all great and productive ways of using AI in product management. I just am very, very careful about how it's applied.
And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us and hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm Avita Santablian, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.